back, everybody, to our second season of Kinky Politics. Got
Woohoo!
you see Kai looking all excited. Um, Today we are going to be talking about the aftermath of I don't know what you would even call it. Let's call it the Trump riots. I don't know what it's officially been called at this point, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. I don't need to explain that. Obviously, I feel like everybody in the country's been having a bit of anxiety, more anxiety than they were having beforehand, and we're just kind of going to talk about how we're feeling and kind of what we want to see happen or where we're hoping things go from here. So, how long has it been since we've talked? 2 months? 3 months?
Oh my God, for fucking ever.
Feels like it's been a year.
It feels like it. I'm so glad to be talking with you. I'm so glad to be starting season 2 in my little brother's bedroom. I feel like a little college student. No, but I mean, honestly, I must admit, super anxious. I'm super anxious for the state of our country, and I'm super anxious about what will happen next. I don't even really need to go into the riots, really, because I think everyone's been watching and seeing. But how many fatalities have there been now? Like,
I think they're up to
4, 5?
5 or 6. I know. I just saw that one of the fatalities was a cop that was one of the Capitol Police committed suicide a couple of days after the fact. I don't really know what went into that, but that's one of the people they've kind of lumped in there. Because I remember the first day it was just that one lady, the Air Force lady who got shot trying to break in to get to Mike Pence. That was the only one the first day, and then the next day I woke up and there were 4 or 5.
Right.
So I still don't. I know one guy apparently tased himself in the nuts somehow and electrocuted himself to death by accidentally tasing himself in the nuts, which I don't want to make light of anyone's passing, but that is the most comical. I don't know. That was just very. We won't touch on that. I still don't know how a couple of the other people died. I heard one person died of a heart attack. The one guy tased himself. The one cop committed suicide. There's still a couple more. I don't know how they died, but
well, one cop was bludgeoned to death.
Oh yeah, because he died a couple days later, right, of injuries.
I don't know. One cop was crushed to death.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was sickening. It was sickening, and it was interesting to me that it was cops who were dying, and no civilians. Especially because this is the Blue Lives Matter folk. So I assumed that there would be more of a respectful encounter between the two of them, and it would be a peaceful, I dare I say protest, but anyway, a peaceful exchange.
Yeah.
And we didn't see that. I didn't expect that, but I hoped for that. Let me just say that I hoped for that, considering it was our Capitol building, and there were cops, and was the National Guard even called out?
Very late. It oddly took about 5 or 6 hours before they were called in, and rumor is that Trump refused to do it. So eventually, I don't know who, but somebody in the military went around Trump to Mike Pence, Pelosi, and McConnell and some congressional leaders, and kind of talked with them and was like, "Hey, what do you guys want us to do? Because this is getting crazy." And they were the ones that made the call to bring in the National Guard. It wasn't Trump.
Wow.
Which to me already seems like we've kind of, that moment right there makes it seem to me like congressional leadership and Mike Pence realized Donald Trump is unfit for office. Because if you're fulfilling the duties of the president while the president is still technically in office because you don't feel he's competent, it seems like you've already invoked the 25th to me. But now they're dancing around it and don't want to do it because I don't know why. But
it's a mess. But we shouldn't just like blanket it as it's a mess, because I feel like I sound like those people who are like, you know what, our country is not what it should be, and we need to unify and call for reconciliation and get together. I don't want to be one of those people. I wasn't one of those people during the Black Lives Matter protests, and currently, and I won't be until there is some real reform, some real changes happening. I don't want violence.
Yeah.
I do not want that, but you know, look. I mean, just look at it. You know, look what's happening. You know, so
Yeah.
it's like I don't know what.
It
I don't
seems
know
like
what.
violence is here. Like, because that's one of the common themes I'm hearing the last, I don't know, it's been almost a week now. It's been 6 days or whatever since it happened. In the past 6 days, there's obviously been a lot of talks about a lot of different options. You know, some people have wanted the Pence and Trump's cabinet to invoke the 25th because they feel that would be the best solution. It's obviously the quickest way to get rid of Trump because he would be gone immediately. And they feel it would be the least likely to maybe incite violence because it would be the Republicans kind of taking care of a Republican problem in house. Then there are other people that want to see the impeachment route, but then people are afraid of that because they feel like if they try to impeach Donald Trump, and that's just going to incite his goons to lash out again. Or there are people talking about um, trying like arresting charging some of the Republican Congress members that kind of encouraged the mob earlier that day. Josh Hawley's famous picture with his fist up as he's walking by the mob. They want those people arrested, but then they're afraid that if they do that, it'll incite violence. And my thing is, I don't really give a fuck if it incites violence because we're talking about insurrection here. We're talking about people that are trying to basically delegitimize the government and perform a coup. So at that point, like you you can't when you have the choice between like we might have to engage in some violence or we're going to have to let America go. My thing is I don't really want either of those, but I damn sure I'm going to choose let's crack some skulls because we can't be just forfeiting the future of the country because we don't want a little bit of violence right now because it would be politically inconvenient. That's
Right.
what I'm hearing right now from people, and it's just mind-boggling to me. Like, how is that even something on your radar? Like, I don't give a sorry, but it's
Right.
like I don't care when somebody tries to overthrow the fucking government. We don't need to be saying, well, we don't want to incite a little bit of violence. We've already passed that point at this point.
Right.
Like they broke into Congress, and somebody like they had Secret Service people having to hold a gun to somebody's head as he was trying to get into where Congress members were. We're past that. We're past not trying to incite violence. Violence has been incited. We need to
Right.
put it down and stand for. We need to show not only the world but people in our country that want to try and do stuff like this. We need to let them know where we stand on this. And if we're going to be wish-washy on this, there's only going to be more attempts like this are going to happen.
Amen. Amen. I 100% agree with you, Chris. Um, I I don't know. I wonder if Biden will have the wherewithal to to you know to basically make sure that those people suffer the consequences. I just don't because I don't see I see so many I feel like so many of them are going to get off.
Yeah.
And I found it really interesting that there have been some airlines who are knocking these people back from flying. It's crazy. Have you been seeing this? Oh, I sent you something about it.
Yeah, I know American Airlines had a lot of issues. I don't know what exactly happened on these flights, but I know American Airlines had a lot of issues. So the day after the riots, American Airlines changed their policy. They no longer serve alcoholic beverages on flights to or from Washington, D.C. because I guess a lot of these pastors were having some drinks and then getting crazy and getting into politically heated discussions amongst the passengers and with flight attendants. So but
There
I
you
haven't heard of much else that's kind of happened.
go. Yeah, it's hectic. It's also unbelievable because I just never thought that it just seems wild to me if you're banned from an entire airline. It just seems wild. But then again, it's a private company, and
Yeah.
they did ban Trump from Twitter and Facebook.
It's like all
And
social media, like Snapchat, like all these different places.
yeah, and poor guy Google. No,
Uh,
he can't even Google some shit now.
what?
It's
How do you get banned from Google?
don't know.
I don't
He's
even know
gonna
how that's possible.
he's gonna don't know, I don't know, but he's gonna be sitting in that fucking bathroom while he's taking a shit, just reading shampoo bottles. You know what I mean? He's not gonna be able to Google anything anymore, So the
You know,
phone is just
that's
huh?
another thing that is I've heard many people trying to argue that this is some kind of free speech issue. I'm sorry, social media is not free speech. Social media is private companies.
Right.
Now, if the government wants to take nationalize social media companies, which I fully support, if they want to do that, then we can have a different conversation. But as it stands right now, if
Private.
if Google or not Google, if Facebook can kick me off Facebook for violating their terms of agreement, I don't see why the fucking president's any different. It's a private company. Just
Mhm.
because he's chosen to use it as his form of communication with the public because he hates the media and refuses to go through the media like every other fucking president has before him, does not mean that we're going to rewrite free speech laws just to accommodate this guy. Like, that is insane. Like, they should have kicked his ass off the fucking 4 years ago. The very first time he said shit that violated their stuff should have been gone.
Mhm.
Like, but
Yeah.
I don't know what the media would do without Trump on Twitter. Cause like, I mean, really, I have no idea what they're going to do once Joe Biden takes over and Joe Biden's not tweeting out offensive shit all day for them to like make that the news. Because like
Right.
that's all they've done for the past 4 years is just whatever Trump has tweeted has been the news. Like nothing else in the world matters.
Honestly, it's humiliating even knowing that, discussing that, acknowledging that. It's humiliating. It honestly is humiliating because it's like, oh, I spend most of my time now in Australia.
Yeah,
I hate telling people, you know, when they ask me, where are you from? I hate telling them that because the next discussion is Trump, right?
yeah,
And then it's like, yeah, it's a reminder that our president tweets. He doesn't, really have press conferences. He tweets. He doesn't have, he doesn't address the nation. He tweets. And if he does address the nation, it's through tweeting.
yeah,
Um, it's humiliating. It's humiliating. I anyway, we can talk about this for a long time. And
yes,
that's not the point of this discussion. The point of this discussion is to raise light and awareness and more discussion on the aftermath of these riots and the transition into the next, the next cabinet, the next president, and what that's going to be like.
yeah,
And um, also just addressing the state of common people, myself, yourself, and where we are watching all of this, partaking in all of this, and what we're doing, how we're feeling, what we can do, and what we hope for, I guess.
yeah. I don't know. You want to go first? You want me to go?
Well, I can go first, but I'll add you to my 2 cents here. But I haven't spoken, as everyone knows, Chris and I haven't spoken for a while, and it's always great to talk. And we know that before we ever record any of these conversations, that we need to have a little bit of chit chat prior because we will talk each other's ears off as we do.
Yeah,
But our conversation was largely centered around anxiety, and for a multitude, excuse me, of reasons. I have anxiety, Chris has anxiety, but it's no surprise that we both have anxiety and quite a lot of anxiety right now. Um, so if you live in America and whether you're consciously feeling anxious or subconsciously feeling anxious, in large part or in some part, um, that anxiety likely has to do with the state of the country. Um, and we don't, we shouldn't really pretend like it isn't or that it doesn't directly affect us, because it does. Um, People who look like me are getting killed every day by anyone, but particularly white people, police officers. Um, Trump supporters, you know, we've been fighting Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter movement has been going on for quite a while, trying to address some of these issues. So we've been anxious forever. But additionally, we realize that the state of just, you know, our government's being compromised now in a much larger way than I think we assumed. I mean, obviously, Russia's a large way, you know, for that compromise. Like, obviously, it's been compromised, but now we're really seeing it. We're seeing domestic terrorists in our own country in a very visible way, and it's terrifying because it continues to be a thing that's prevalent and ongoing by our current leader, by Trump. And you know, even after he leaves office, I'm not quite sure, you know, what to expect, which is why, you know, I'm hoping for a peaceful transition of power for the next administration, but I don't know. And I also am, as you brought light to as well in our earlier discussion, I'm also a little bit nervous about what to expect, considering where the country is right now and the fact that both Biden and Harris are moderate. So was Obama, as you talked about in 2008. And that's a scary thing. And I will leave it to you to talk about why that's a scary thing.
Well, honestly, like, I feel like part of, I don't know, it's a tricky topic, because what happened the other week to some people has been 4 years in the making. And if that is the opinion that you have about what happened the other day, then you're probably not going to care too much about what happened before Trump. But for people such as myself and other people, I feel this kind of thing was really, honestly, probably 30, 40 years in the making. Obviously, Trump was the kind of catalyst that put it over the top, but Trump didn't come out of nowhere. Trump didn't create the movement that he leads. Trump was just a person who saw it there and kind of capitalized on it. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, I feel like the events that happened under Ronald Reagan, the events that happened under Bush, Clinton, Obama, all of these things have been pushing our country in a direction that is very problematic for me, because it's created more and more of a culture, or not a culture, a country of haves and have-nots, winners and losers. And, you know, what I saw in 2021 or 2020 was two different kind of movements that both were kind of spawned from these policies of the last 40 years, which in America, it's called neoliberalism. I don't know if the rest of the world calls it neoliberalism or they have a different name for it. But there is, you know, people, because I'm 39 years old. This all started happening right around the time, right before I was born is when it started happening. So when you talk to people that are like 20, 30 years older than me, and they tell you about what America was like in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of things that were different in good ways. Like the role of government in people's lives was a lot different. The amount of your income that you spent on housing, transportation, college education, healthcare were much lower. People had a much greater ability to go to work, come home, and just have a life. Like community used to be a thing before like the 80s and 90s kind of dissolved. Like communities just went away. Like all these different things that, you know, kind of went into it, and not to absolve Trump and his goons and all that stuff, but you know, a lot of these forces have kind of been in the making for 30, 40 years. And then they just kind of exploded in 2020 with the third massive protest we've seen about Black black people getting killed by police. I think this is the third big one in the past like 5 or 6 years. So now we're at this point now where every 2 or 3 years we're having a large protest about police violence against black people, and they don't do anything to fix it. They just keep saying thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. Oh, we're going to pass this bill that's going to put body cameras on police. That'll fix it. And then guess what? Those police officers will just kill somebody with the body camera on and they still get off by the judge. So it's like, that's clearly not a solution. And that's kind of what we're getting from our politicians for like that side of the aisle on like things that are upsetting people on the more liberal side and like people in the black community. Like they're in the streets protesting and getting no responses. And then this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this where you have more of like a protest from rural America. And there, you know, there's a lot of things to unpack there. I mean, obviously you have a combination of like some racism and people that are in this Trump cult and people that are in this QAnon thing, which I don't even know enough about it to really go into it. But then I also know what I've seen growing up in rural America. And you have 30 to 40 years of just a disappearance of quality jobs. Like there used to be like decent manufacturing jobs in the Midwest and the Rust Belt. And I don't know if it extended to Boston, but I know like pretty close to there where you have like Buffalo and all those areas, they used to have decent manufacturing jobs. Those
Huge.
jobs all got just shipped out of the country.
Sorry,
So,
I'm sorry. Yeah, continue.
so now people from the area of the country where I'm from, that's why I left the area of the country I'm from, is because there are no jobs. Like there's no hope. Like, I mean, there's a few decent jobs because obviously there are people that have some money in those areas, but for the most part, you just have a bunch of like US corporate chains like Dollar Tree, Dollar General Store, Walmart, these kind of jobs. And it's like if you don't get some nice professional job, that's all that's left for you. So it's like the entire country is falling behind, both in the urban areas and the rural areas. And you know, one side of that has kind of gravitated towards more leftist politics, which is becoming increasingly radical. I mean, regardless how you feel about it, the messaging coming out of leftist politics is becoming increasingly more radical and more aggressive. And then on the right side, they've kind of gravitated more towards Trump. I can't begin to explain it, but the one thing I have noticed is when because I mean, I have a couple relatives that are Trump supporters, and obviously I'm from the Midwest and the rural Midwest, so I know people that like this dude. The one commonality that all seems to have been like their gateway into this Trump movement and like this alt-right thing is being told that your government and the media is lying to you, because it starts off with the truth. And it's true. Our government and our media are lying to us. They have been for decades. So you know that they're lying to you, but nobody's really admitting this. So then you have like this alt-right group that comes along and they're like, hey, they're lying to you. And you're like, that's true. See, I knew it. Somebody else is going to tell me the truth now. And then everything they tell you after that's complete lies. But they hooked you with that initial truth because they told you the truth that everybody's been denying to you. I can't get my Democratic friends to admit that the media lies to us. Like they won't.
What?
They will not admit. Like my dad, dude. My dad watches CNN. My dad watches CNN every fucking day. Loves Don Lemon and Jake Tapper or whoever the fuck, Cuomo, whoever's on there. My dad believes that what CNN is telling him is the truth. My dad does not believe that CNN, which is owned by AT&T, would possibly lie to him. Or I have friends of mine that watch MSNBC all day long. MSNBC is owned by Comcast, okay?
MSNBC, it might as well be a damn soap opera. That's the worst network to watch.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. And if you notice, all those rejects that got fired from Fox, where did they all go to? MSNBC.
Amen.
But I have Democrat friends of mine that swear that MSNBC is a trusted news site. If they watch MSNBC, they're informed, they know the truth. But those people that watch Fox are crazy. And then my friends that watch Fox is the same way. Like, no, Fox is telling me the truth, but CNN and MSNBC are lying to you. And I'm the crazy one because I'm telling both of them, like, look, all the media sites are lying to you. Like, you can't trust any of them. You can't trust AT&T, you can't trust Comcast, you can't trust Fox, and you can't trust Disney. So it's like, for me, I'm just like, I don't know. I see kind of how we got here. I feel like I see pretty clearly like what we need to do as a nation to get out of this mess we're in. But the hard part for me is when I hear politicians of varying, whether they be moderate Democrats, progressive Democrats, socialists I know, right-wing people, whatever, people that are in media that are supposed to be the experts. All these people that I hear talking, I don't hear any of them really talking about the things we need to do to actually improve this country to make sure this shit doesn't happen again.
Right.
All I hear them talking about is wanting to get extra punitive towards these people, or maybe wanting to hold back because if we go after these Trump people, it's really going to handicap what Joe Biden could do his first 100 days. So if we try to impeach Donald Trump, then we can't do any of the other legislation we want to do because impeachment's going to suck all the room out of the air. This kind of stuff. And I'm like, damn, really? Like we got almost 350 million people and we don't have like one person like in any position of power in this entire country that really has an idea what they're doing or like has a vision, like beyond just like the same things that got us into this mess. Like that's what's concerning to me the most. It's like, to me, this was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was like a complete wake up call, but it was kind of like 9/11 for me, where it was like, I heard the alarm go off and I had the opportunity to reach over and smack the snooze button or to get up and start looking around like, oh, what the fuck's going on here? Like we got some work to do. And I feel like most people just hit the snooze button. Same thing after 9/11. Like nobody really changed their thinking after that. That was an eye-opening thing for me. This is another eye-opening thing for me where it's like clearly what we're doing is not working. So we all need to change some stuff. And I'm not one of those people to point fingers like it you or you or you. Like I look at it as like we've all contributed to this mess. Some of us have contributed. Some of us have contributed much, much more to this mess. But in our own way, like we've all contributed to this mess. Because like I know I've engaged in toxic behaviors, whether it be online or with my friends, like insulting people and like putting people down and like all this spewing some hateful rhetoric that I don't really mean, but in the heat of the moment you say it, and then that's what that person's going to take away for like from my side of the aisle. They're going to take away that. Like this is what those people think of me, and it's like I think we just really got to open our eyes and start thinking like real hard, like what do we want this country to be 20 years from now? Because the decisions we make in the aftermath of this are really going to dictate the next couple of decades for our country and like what kind of country we're going to be leaving to our kids and grandkids. Because I mean, like you study your background is political science. You have a political science degree. Mine's more history. So, I look at these things from like when these things have played out in previous countries, how have those countries responded and what does that cause to happen? And I got to say, like these are delicate times. Like you really got to make sure you handle this correctly because it does kind of transform the next 20, 30 years of your country.
Yeah, I know you're very much a history repeats itself,
Yeah.
Type. And it makes a lot of sense given, your background. And it's funny you mention it, I'm a political science major, you're a history major, because in my political science, I guess, background, yes, I do agree with you that history repeats itself. It does. But I don't know if it feels different to me because of the events and because it's a different time and it's because the country feels so desperate. Like I feel like I remember what was happening with Bush and being like, holy shit, this is fucking crazy, But I also remember feeling like I don't remember being scared walking around and just like interacting with people on a daily basis. I feel scared walking around and interacting with people on a daily basis because I don't know what to expect anymore, because I feel that the state, the general state of everyone is like, anything can happen. Someone might throw a pipe bomb. Someone might, get upset and take out their gun. Someone might decide not to, someone might decide to scream at me because like I decided I'm not going to wear a mask today, and
yeah,
it feels a little, I guess, it feels a little bit more insidious, and
definitely is.
It feels a little bit more insidious, a little bit more clear in terms of seeing that we've got some inside problems. I feel like 2008, Bush transitioning into Obama we saw problems, but it was more so those political analysts who were like, hey, people, look at this. And there were a few like yourself who were like, hey, people, look at this. And me, as a political science person, I'm like, well, hey, let's see. Let's see. You know, we've got to gauge a couple of things. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
like to dance. But it feels overall, it feels different and it feels a bit more dire. But, you know, in 2008, I was, I don't know, 23 or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And I was much younger. I'm obviously a lot older now. And so now I'm like, well, what the fuck? I take everything a bit more seriously. I'm a little bit more trepidatious. I don't have that like same, you know, my ideologies are obviously the same, but like the way I live my life is a little bit different, you know? And so maybe there's that as well that's added to it. But I don't know. Somehow I feel the situation is we've got so much, we're saturated with information as a country now, more than we were before. And there's so much I won't say knowledge, but information, whether that's legit and accurate information or bad information. We have so much of that. And it just feels like as a result of that, people are on guard and ready to just pop off in an instant because of it.
Yeah.
And that for me makes it a lot different than that time. You know, technology back then, and I feel that it's a huge part of our current times.
Mm-hmm.
Technology back then was still, it's not like it is now. I feel like it's almost like 100 years into the future.
Oh yeah.
Where we were, you know? And so as a result, it just doesn't feel like an opportunity for history to repeat itself. It feels like a new thing because of technology, you know?
It certainly could be.
But I'm not negating what you're saying. And I also feel the same fear in that it could repeat itself. But in saying that, how are you moving forward with your life? What are you doing?
Well, what I am doing is, so I have re-registered as a Democrat for the first time since 2016, because I have to do so in Colorado to really participate in politics at the local level. So I registered as a Democrat. I am now attending my monthly Democratic local, like my state rep and all those people, they have a monthly kind of meeting. So I'm now attending those so I can be a little more informed as to what my Democratic Party is doing. And if I feel they need some suggestions on maybe some things we should be doing, I can now speak to them, because before, as an unaffiliated voter, I was not allowed to really be participating in that process because that's just how my state's set up. I have talked a coworker of mine into possibly running for city council. She is, I don't know her exact age. She's somewhere in like the 50 to 60 age range. Her grandmother was the first Black person elected to our state Senate here. So she has a little bit of name recognition. She's actually supposed to be meeting today with the kind of people in my area to decide if she wants to run or not. So that could be pretty exciting. Trying to get my union to get more involved in our local politics, because to me, it doesn't make sense that, you know, my union or unions in general, you know, they bargain for wages, right? That's mainly what they do, is they bargain for wages and kind of like some safety stuff at your work or whatever, but they're not really focusing on having representation for workers or just working class people at the local and state level. They pretty much just vote for whatever Democrat runs for office instead of like trying to get some of their own people in there. So that's what I'm trying to talk my union into doing, because I'm looking at it like, if I get a pay raise at work, that's great. But if my landlord in my city can just jack my rent up, then that just negates my raise and that doesn't help me. I need to have voices in city council that are also kind of focused on keeping the schools that my members go to good, keep making sure the minimum wage is good here, because we just had a black Republican lady actually tank the minimum wage thing, so we could have been getting paid $2 more an hour this year, but they decided now wasn't the time because of COVID. But before COVID, somehow
A
now was
black
the time too.
Republican.
Is the first person I've ever voted for based on identity. I didn't realize she was a Republican because everybody in my city has to run. You don't get to run as a party. Everybody runs unaffiliated. So I knew we didn't have any black women on my city council, and I thought we needed to because my city has a lot of diversity. We have a lot of black and Latino people here. So I wanted to vote for one of the two black ladies, right? And I was watching their debates, their final debates, to decide which of these two black ladies am I voting for, because I already picked this one Latino lady I was voting for. And one black lady said, because so we have like a, what do they call it, like a immigration prison type thing, or wherever they take immigrants. We have one of those here, which is fucked up because I live in the only city that has immigrants in Colorado, really, and that's where they decide to put the immigrant jail. Like, what the fuck? And you have to drive by it every day. It's fucked up, big ass facility. So what these progressives and socialists did here was they went and protested outside the warden's house. I don't know how they found his address, but they went and protested outside the warden's house, which is perfectly legal to do on public property, protesting peacefully. Obviously, it may be a little uncomfortable for the guy inside his house and his neighbors, but hey, don't fucking work for a shitty job if you don't want that shit. I mean, he's getting paid a couple $100,000 a year to fucking keep immigrants jailed up like convicts, so fuck him. But so they protested outside of his house. This black woman, who is a proud Democrat progressive, said that reminded her of when, because I think she's from somewhere on the East Coast, like Pennsylvania or Ohio or something like that. And she said that her family was the first black family to move into the neighborhood she lived in. And I guess some racist did something similar or something to make her family feel that they weren't wanted and they should leave. She compared this to that, like protesting outside of a immigrant detention facility's warden's house. She compared that to racists trying to make her family leave her neighborhood. So I was like, fuck that. I ain't voting for that black lady. So I voted for the other black lady. Turns out she says she's independent, but she was a Republican for most of her life and she still tends to vote like a Republican. So yeah, I fucked up. That's why you don't do identity politics. That's why you don't vote for people based on skin tone or gender.
Well, first of all, you never vote for a black Republican. That I'm sorry. I just, the only black Republican I've ever been like, oh, okay, is Colin Powell.
Yeah. Who's no longer a Republican, he announced today. He said he can no longer consider himself a Republican.
He's a good man.
I was like, the torture program under Bush wasn't enough, but Donald Trump did it.
Honestly, something about the military. I feel like most military people turn, that's another discussion. We'll talk about that later. But I do feel like military, I feel comfortable voting for military if they express their ideas and I identify with them, irrespective of what side they're on. Because for whatever reason, I feel that they are more inclined to want to tell the truth based on how they've, based on the military, like formalities and principles. Yeah. So I've seen them shift and change in a very dramatic and authentic and earnest way when they see something wrong. But so that's why I'm like the only, the only black Republican who I've been like, oh, okay, is Colin Powell. Outside of that, Chris, you never put your foot down for a black Republican. Black Republican was, they probably were, descendants of, house slaves. You know what I'm saying? And those house slaves who were, I know I'm probably gonna get so much heat for this, so I'm sorry in advance, guys. But this is my stupid opinion. I like politics, but in the same breath, I'm not saying it's 100% true. I'm just saying, never vote for a black Republican. You vote for whoever you want. But I'm just saying, never vote for a black Republican, okay? Unless they're in the military. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That is the first and only Republican I've ever voted for, too, by the way.
Oh wow. Okay.
I've never voted for a Republican. Now that I know she is one, I will not vote for her again. I had to let her know on Twitter too. I was just like, look, you voted down minimum wage. Like after you patted yourself on the back for representing working people and then you voted down minimum wage.
How does that make any sense?
No.
Yeah. So I feel like the other thing that we're not really touching upon, which I would love to touch upon, but I realize we're running out of time, is what I'm doing, boys and girls, to deal with all of this is, obviously my anxiety is up. I'm obviously doing a number of number of personal sort of technique work to help me just kind of deal on a regular basis, because this is traumatic stuff, and I think that we should really be upfront about what we're dealing with, because you never know what someone else is dealing with and what someone else might need. And Chris and I had a great discussion in the beginning before our conversation with you guys about our anxiety regarding this. And it was really refreshing to hear, that he has certain tactics that he does. And it was good to sort of exchange, But in addition to all of this, I am looking forward to when, Chris, Chris has been talking about it for a while, that, he's really interested in running and would like to sometime. But one of these days when he finally barrels down and makes a decision, I will definitely, he hasn't asked me yet, but I will definitely be his PR and campaign consultant. And I am really looking forward to that. And I'm already building. So Chris, get it together, because I've already got a schedule. I've already got a preliminary layout. And I am really looking forward to it. And one day you will see Chris, you guys, and you will see me somewhere in the background, putting things together. But this is all to say that it is so important to stay not just informed, but connected, and stay on top of what's happening by being directly involved, because it affects you. It affects me. It affects Chris. It affects everyone. And the more you know on a direct level, so not just getting your news from the media, but being involved in your local politics, in your city politics, in whatever you can, even in your state politics, if you can, is super important. And you get to be part of something, and you get to help fix something, hopefully. And that's important. And on that note, I think we're time.
Yeah, we're good. We went a little bit longer today. So, but it's all right. It's the first episode of the season. And it's such a crazy thing I could talk about this for like an entire week. Like, it's just such a crazy thing. I mean, it's such a historical thing too. It's like, obviously it's the first time it's ever happened in our nation's history, and hopefully the last time, but we'll see. I mean, we got a lot of work.
And I mean, we want to be, you have to think to yourself, what side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to be on that side of history where you were one of the people who just sat waiting for things to happen?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be on the side of the history where you were doing the right things? And by right, you know what right is. Yeah. Or do you want to be on the other side of history where you were doing the wrong things, which in my opinion is part of the other side, which sits in the middle and does nothing.
Yeah.
In fact, that side's probably the worst side to be on.
I honestly respect apathetic people less than people that like Trump type people. Because as much as I like disagree with them, I at least respect the fact that they're like fighting for their convictions.
Right.
But people that like, when people acknowledge to me that they realize what's happening is fucked up, but then they refuse to put forth any effort whatsoever to try and change it, that's even worse to me. Like,
I agree 100%. So what side of the history are you going to be on?
I think we picked our side, but it's up to you guys now. Anyway, like, click, subscribe, and all that stuff down below. We'll see you guys next week. It's been a good time.
my new black.